The California coast is dying mile after mile of ocean floor. Stripped bare, no kelp, no fish. Just purple spikes covering the rock like a plague. Sea urchins, millions of them. Nothing eating them, nothing stopping them. Marine biologist Jim Estes had a theory. One almost nobody believed. He said the answer wasn't chemical, it wasn't political. It was a single animal, hunted to near extinction a century earlier, for its fur now down to a scattered few hundred, hiding in remote coves. The sea otter Estes wanted to bring them back. Not for their fur this time, for what he believed they could do to a dying coastline. Wildlife officials were skeptical. Fishermen were furious nobody had tried anything like this before. But in 1987, they moved forward anyway, 37 otters loaded into crates, shipped south to a stretch of coast that hadn't seen a healthy kelp forest in decades. What happened next would change how scientists understood entire ecosystems. And it would start a fight that lasted 30 years. The otters arrived at San Nicolas Island, a remote outpost, 60 miles off the mainland chosen because it was isolated, far from fishing boats, far from conflict. Researcher Jim Estes stood on the deck as the first crate opened. An otter slipped into the water, vanished for a moment. Nobody breathed. Then it surfaced, looked around, dove again. Estes had spent years building the case for this moment. Now he had to watch it play out in real time. Within days, something strange happened. The otters weren't staying near the island. One by one, they began disappearing. Some swam south, some swam north. Tracking signals went dead in open water. By the end of the first month, more than a third of the otters were gone, not dead, just gone. Nobody could explain it. Fishermen on the mainland started reporting otters showing up in places they were never supposed to be. Places with no protection, no permits, no plan. Estes got a call late one night from a colleague. An otter had washed up near Santa Barbara, tangled in a gill net, dead. It was one of theirs. The program was barely a month old, and already it looked like it was falling apart. Estes pulled out the tracking chart. Something didn't add up. The otters weren't scattering randomly, they were heading somewhere fast. And whatever was pulling them there, he was about to find out it wasn't random at all. Estes laid the tracking charts across his desk. Every dot marked a signal. Every line marked a path, and every path pointed the same direction. North toward the kelp beds, near Big Sur. It didn't make sense. San Nicolas Island had food, shelter, safety. Why would they leave all of it behind? Then a technician noticed something buried in the data. The otters weren't fleeing danger. They were following a smell, a chemical signature drifting through the current. Coming from somewhere, far up the coast. Estes had seen that signature before. In his own research notes from over a decade earlier. It was the scent of decaying kelp. Except there wasn't supposed to be any kelp left up there. That stretch of coast had been an urchin barren for years. Stripped clean, same as everywhere else. Estes chartered a boat the next morning. Colleagues told him he was chasing a data glitch. He didn't care. When they reached the site, nobody said a word. Kelp, real kelp. A thin, fragile patch, no bigger than a football field. Surviving in a place it had no right to survive. Estes dove in himself to confirm it. That's when he saw them, 3 otters already there feeding. Not the ones from San Nicolas. These otters had never been tagged, which meant one thing: they weren't part of the program at all. And that raised a question nobody in the room was prepared to answer. If these otters weren't tagged, where did they come from? Estes had a theory, one that unsettled him. A handful of otters had survived undetected for decades, hiding in a remote cove near Big Sur. Descendants of the few that escaped the fur trade a century earlier. Nobody had confirmed it, nobody had looked hard enough, until now the implications hit him fast. If wild otters were already rebuilding kelp on their own, the relocation program wasn't the beginning of the story. It was catching up to something already in motion. Estes brought the discovery to state wildlife officials. Instead of excitement, he got resistance. A fishery representative sat across the table, arms crossed. Otters ate urchins. Urchins were also a commercial catch, sold overseas for high prices. More otters meant fewer urchins meant fewer paychecks. The room turned tense fast. One official warned Estes directly, "Publish this, and you'll have fishermen on the coast furious before the ink dries." Estes didn't back down. He'd spent too long chasing this exact moment. But that night, driving back along Highway 1, he got a call. Someone had found more remains washed up near Monterey, not fishing net victims this time. Something else puncture wounds deliberate. Estes gripped the wheel. If someone was killing otters on purpose, this wasn't just a science story anymore. The wound pattern wasn't consistent with a boat propeller or a shark. State biologist Raymond Cole examined the carcass himself, a single mark, close range. He'd seen it before, years earlier, in a case that never made headline to rifle. Word spread fast through the research station. Someone was targeting otters deliberately. Estes thought back to the meeting in Sacramento. The fishery representative's warning replayed in his head. He wasn't accusing anyone, not yet, but the timing was hard to ignore. Wildlife officers set up patrols along the stretch of coast near Monterey, quiet ones, no press releases. 3 nights later, they spotted a boat running without lights, drifting close to the kelp beds. By the time they closed in, it was gone. No arrests, no proof. Just an empty stretch of water and a growing list of dead otters. Estes knew publishing his kelp findings now could make things worse. But staying silent felt like abandoning the very animals he'd fought to bring back. He made a decision that would follow him for the rest of his career. He went public early. Data half-finished, conclusions still forming. He stood in front of reporters and said something no scientist wants to say. "We don't fully understand what's happening, but if we don't act now, we may lose the chance to find out." The story hit newspapers within a week, and it didn't just reach scientists. It reached fishermen, politicians, and a governor's office that was about to get very interested in Jim Estes. The governor's office didn't call to shut the program down. They called because urchin fishermen were threatening lawsuits. Estes was summoned to a hearing in Sacramento. Cameras reported a room full of people who wanted this to go away. He brought photographs instead of arguments. Before and after images of the big Sir kelp bed. Barren rock, then a forest, thick and alive in under 2 years. Fish populations up, nursery habitat, returning for species that had vanished from the area for a generation. One senator asked the question everyone was thinking. Was it worth the cost to the fishing industry? Estes didn't flinch. He explained what kelp forests actually did. They pulled carbon from the water, they buffered the coastline from storms. They supported an entire food web, urchins included, just in smaller numbers. The otters weren't destroying the ecosystem. They were the reason it had won at all. The hearing didn't end the tension completely. Poaching cases near Monterey continued for years, quietly investigated, never fully solved. But the program survived. By the mid-1990s, the otter population along that stretch of coast had grown from 37 to several hundred. Kelp forests returned across dozens of miles of coastline that scientists had written off as dead for good. Today, California's sea otters remain one of the most studied comeback stories in marine science. Proof that sometimes saving an entire ecosystem starts with bringing back a single animal. If you want more true stories like this one, the kind most people never hear about, stick around. There's more where this came from.